We're jam-packed from our studios live at the Seaport District at Pier 17, brought to you by Chase. Jalen is here, Legler is here, Lowe is here. RJ and Jay are over there still arguing about something, and we have a very busy hour coming your way. Here's the menu. We're getting up with Big Ben. The Sixers make a commitment, really bring a title to Philly, or was this a huge mistake? We're discussing it. And still waiting on Kawhi. But the tea leaves suggest he is very close to making a call that would no doubt create a new super team in LA. We will discuss. And one of KD's former teammates says the Warriors took him for granted. There's at least one of us on our set who thinks that is absolutely right. You'll hear who, what, when, where, and why as we roll on in this hour starting right now. On a day where we've had at least one very big NBA story drop, not the one we were expecting, courtesy of our Adrian Wojnarowski. The 76ers have reportedly offered Ben Simmons the max. It's a 5-year, $168 million deal. Woj was on with us earlier breaking down some of the particulars, and he essentially told us this is the max, and he described it as something of a no-brainer. With all of the flaws, and if you were not with us a half hour ago, we spent a considerable amount of time talking about Ben Simmons, what he can do, and what his obvious limitation is, which is his inability to shoot. Do you think it was a no-brainer to give him the contract?
Yes, a no-brainer. You think a guy like Chris Middleton for the Bucks was an all-star this year. He can shoot the basketball. If you were drafting a team, I would take Ben Simmons over him. Ben Simmons is a really talented player. Can dribble, can create for others, can get into a defensive stance, is an amazing athlete finishing above the hoop. But when you're pairing him with Joel Embiid late in games, Joel Embiid is going to occupy the real estate 15 to 18 feet and or on the block. That's where you want him. Therefore, in the playoffs, when Ben can't make free throws, you can foul him, and he can't make jumpers, he's going to be on the baseline. It distorts the spacing.
I really want to ask Tim Legler this, and I don't mean it to be cheeky, but you were one of the great shooters the league has ever had. And for those who don't remember Tim Legler's career, you were a three-point specialist. So as a pure shooter, watch him shoot the basketball, or attempt to on the limited times that he does. What are you seeing? Why can't he do it?
And I get this question, I can't tell you how many times a day because I live in that market, right? So I'm always around Sixers fans.
Right.
And they're always grabbing me, man. What would it take? Could you work with him? And I say to myself, when I look at him, this is a lot more than just getting in the gym with some reps. You're talking about a complete breakdown and a reset of all of his mechanics. His shooting hand turns this way. His elbow points at the sideline. He's been doing this since he was probably 10 years old. He's now 22 years old. Can you do it? Yes. Do you know how long that process takes to get a guy to start this thing completely over and trust in you and understand it's going to be worse initially because your body's not used to it, and have him trust it long enough to fight through it till his muscle memory kicks in? I don't know that it can be done with a 22-year-old player that in his mind is saying, I affect the game in so many ways, I'm okay. We all know if he added it, it's a completely different level for Ben Simmons. You're talking about maybe an MVP type of candidate if he could just make an 18-foot jump shot, much less a three-pointer. We all know it. Being able to do it and convince a guy that's had this much success his entire life, overwhelming people athletically, that he absolutely needs to add it, and now he just got a $170 million payday without it, that's a much harder proposition and a much more difficult and long process to break down a guy's shot at this age.
Zach, you talk to as many people around the league as genuinely as anyone. What do people say about this? What do people believe he can turn into? Because if he does not develop some sort of shot, then there is an obvious limitation. There is a ceiling on what he can actually become.
Look, when the going got tough in the playoffs last year, what did they do? They handed the ball to Jimmy Butler and told Ben Simmons, get in the dunker spot under the rim and get out of the way because we don't trust you to run the offense. So I don't think he was thrilled with that. I think he thinks he's way better than that, and he's probably right. But look, I think around the league, there's a little bit of a skepticism that he's going to be a franchise player. There's definitely skepticism that he and Joel are a fit that wins a championship. But, what are you supposed to do? You don't get to go grocery shopping at the superstar store. You get the superstars that you can get, and you make it work. So what you do in this situation, Jalen's right. It's a no-brainer. It's the smallest max contract possible. He's 22 years old. The Nuggets just maxed Jamal Murray. Who would you rather give a max contract to right now, Jamal Murray or Ben Simmons? Ben Simmons. And you figure it out later, whether that's trading him or making this work.
Listen, sometimes I'm listening to this conversation and I feel like there's something only I am missing. Maybe you're all here, you're all seeing something I'm not seeing. If you can't shoot the ball at all, if you will not even attempt to shoot the ball, you are only so valuable. So I'm not suggesting he doesn't do everything else better than Jamal Murray and Chris Middleton, but late in a game that matters, I forget who said it this morning, a lot of guys can give you the first 3.5 quarters. In the last 6 minutes of a playoff game, I would rather have Jamal Murray, I would rather have Chris Middleton, I would rather have someone who was a threat to shoot the basketball.
I understand where you're going with the shooting comment, but the reality of it is there is more to the game than actually shooting. They're going to put a tall lineup out there. They're going to do a lot of switching. He's going to be effective that way. He's going to get out in transition, get a lot of layups, get a lot of dunks. He can pass people open. He has great court vision. There are a lot of amazing things to his game, Greeny, but he has to get a shot.
Very quick, because I have to get to some other stuff here, but Jason Kidd is a guy that I would think of because when he came into the league, he couldn't shoot, and he eventually developed a three.
He extended his career as a
dangerous
result.
Three-point shooter. Can Ben Simmons do that?
And Derrick Rose is doing it right now with what he added to his game a year ago after losing the athletic ability. I don't know that he's ever going to add the ability to make anything outside the paint. I don't know if he will or not, but here's why this makes sense for the Sixers standpoint. He's not the top of the food chain there. And with all the other things that he does, you've got enough offense and scores around him that the other areas of the game that he does excel at, this contract makes sense. If he was the guy you're asking to take you to the promised land as your best offensive player, then no. Then your question is a valid one. Is it worth paying the money? In this situation, when they're poised to go for it for the foreseeable future, this contract makes sense.
All right, I'm going to leave it there because I have other things to get to. There is the overwhelming story in the NBA that everyone is waiting for, and that is Kawhi Leonard making up his mind where it is he's going to go. All eyes remain on the one man, finals MVP, Kawhi Leonard. And in what is almost a refreshing turn of events, Leonard is deciding between the Lakers, the Clippers, or remaining with the Raptors. And thus far, no one seems to have any real sense of what it is he's planning to do. I've got Richard and Jay standing by over there. Guys, let's give you the first crack at this. If he were to go to the Lakers, this is the point that I was making on our program this morning. As we speak right now, there is not what we would consider to be a true super team in the NBA. There isn't one. We've had one for pretty much the better part of the last 15 years, going back to the Celtics, and then we had obviously what LeBron did in Miami, and then Golden State. Do you believe it would be a good thing or a bad thing for the NBA if Kawhi Leonard chooses the Lakers?
I think it'd be a great thing, right? And it's not necessarily because it's the Lakers. It's because it really gives the NBA, it makes a villain. It gives a villain. There's one team that everybody is charging and everyone's trying to change. You see what the Golden State Warriors, every team started getting smaller guys, trying to get shooters. You start to see the NBA change. You will only see the NBA change if there is that one group and that one team that is dominant. You look at the Shaq and Kobe team. All of a sudden, big men started getting overpaid around the NBA because you just needed someone to go against Shaq to take down. I don't want to say they were a super team, but they were the most dominant team of the early 2000s. So I think it's good for the NBA because that's how the NBA changes. That's how it's always flexing. And all of a sudden, different players have value based off of what you're trying to accomplish.
Look, from a marketing perspective, I think it's a great thing. But I hate it as a basketball perspective. And my perspective has changed. Like the one thing that's relevant in life is progress and evolution. And when KD first went over to Golden State, I actually defended it for a second because I thought, oh, KD's learned how to play. I own it. I defended it.
You're defending KD. Surprise.
Well, I've also criticized KD. You defending LeBron because he won your chip. Surprise. Anyway, back to my original point.
At least I have a reason to defend.
That's good.
At least I have a reason to.
That's all right. Anyway, back to my original point. I defended it, and then after the first year, I didn't like it because they blew everybody out. There was no point to even watching it.
I know.
There's no point to even watching. Yes, you felt that too.
Yeah.
So my only thing is you get AD, you get Kawhi, and you get LeBron all on the same team.
Oh, and
they're just going to run over everybody.
And that's a coach's dream. Let's not forget about Kyle Kuzma. And then you're going to possibly add guys like J.R. Smith. You're going to possibly add guys like Andre Iguodala. That's what coaches get excited about. That's like coaches porn. Like that's what they look forward to get a team like that can literally go out there and just destroy everybody.
I love that you said coaches porn on national TV.
Well, I love it that you just repeated it.
Yes, I did.
Yeah. Okay. So like if one of us is going down, we're both going down now. So
all right.
That's awesome.
Brittany, this is where we throw it back to you, Brittany, in the desk. We're done here.
You guys over
We're canceling each other out. Yeah. We're done here. Back to you guys.
Let me try and get some more votes here and sort of turn the conversation, guys. Thank you very much and bring it back to the table here if I can, because Jalen, you played at a time in the league when Michael Jordan's Bulls were winning all those championships. And for those who are not old enough to remember, the league was very different then. While the Bulls were the favorite to win it basically every year, it was not a foregone conclusion they were going to. There were any number of teams, both in their own conference in the East and in the West, who felt as though they were every bit potentially as good as the Bulls were. That has not existed for a while. Is it your belief that the Lakers putting together this super team will be good or bad for the league?
I think it'll be bad for the league. If you really want to just make it good for the league, then he might as well just go to the Clippers. And then you'll have two teams opposing each other in Los Angeles to see who wins the West every year. Or just have them stay in Toronto, where you saw a first champion crowned outside of the outside of the U.S., and all of a sudden you have another nation engaged in our game. So it's going to be interesting to see what he decides. But if I'm Kawhi, I stay with the Raptors.
Quickly, Legs, if he goes to the Lakers, can anyone play with them? Are they just so dominant that cancel Christmas?
Yeah, I think it's foregone conclusion because of the diverse skill set. You're talking about 3 of the top 7 guys, and they check off every box collectively that you could possibly want on the court. So for me, it'd be a foregone conclusion, and I agree, not great for the league. Kawhi Leonard stays in Toronto, he might overnight become the most popular player in the league.
Super quick, yes or no, good or bad for the league, Zach, if he goes to the Lakers?
From a marketing perspective, probably good, but I think the season would be equally fun if it was just completely wide open. But I will say this, nothing's a foregone conclusion in the NBA. Nothing.
I would be rooting like crazy for him to stay where he is. All right, next piece of business. I found this very interesting. Kevin Durant, as we all know, is now a Brooklyn Net. In a statement released yesterday, the Warriors co-chairman Joe Lacob said no player will ever wear Durant's 35 for the Warriors as long as he is there. But Durant's friend Kendrick Perkins was on First Take earlier today and had this to say.
And I think this was the best move for him. In my opinion, I think Golden State took it for granted. I think honestly he never bounced back from what him and Draymond Green had going on throughout the regular season. Those were some harsh words that Draymond said to him. I never talked to KD about it, but when Chris Haynes reported it and I actually read and seen what Draymond had said, I mean, come on, man. I mean, it's hard to bounce back from that. And to say Golden State actually went out and recruited Kevin Durant, and then all of a sudden you call them all types of names and say, we don't need you, we won without you. I mean, I thought this before the injury. I thought KD was 1 foot out the door already.
Jalen Rose, do you believe the Warriors took Kevin Durant for granted?
I think both sides got exactly what they went into it for. Okay, I can't act like the Warriors used KD other than the injury part. That's another subject for another day when they were down 3-1. But he went there as a hired gun. They had what he needed. They had 73 wins, but they lost in the finals. And as a matter of fact, along the way, they beat him. He needed to rewrite his championship level narrative, so he went there. I saw Bob Myers at their first parade make a joke about KD joining the bandwagon. I know about what Kendrick Perkins is saying about Draymond, but each side to me knew what they were getting into. None of us thought KD was going there forever. It's going to be people right now that say, I told you he was leaving, I told you he was leaving. Everybody, we all said that this entire year. That's the reason. We knew it wasn't forever.
Super quick, do you believe that he was taken for granted in Golden State?
I thought he was super appreciated from the organizational standpoint, his teammates, the fan base, you name it. For me, if Kevin Durant thought going there that it was going to become anything other than the Steph Curry era, then he was fooling himself. Because you're talking about one of the most beloved players by a fan base in the history of the league and a champion and an MVP. So him going there, he wanted to win, and he wanted to play that style. He did both. He accomplished both. He got 2 finals MVPs. But this era will be known as the Steph Curry era 20 years from now.
Yeah, I think other than the Draymond incident, which all the reporting around the team was they got over that and it made them stronger. I don't know if that's true or not, but I don't think they took him for granted. He went to a team that was borderline unbeatable when they had 4 stars, and this is what happened.
Jay and Richard seem to laugh at something in that. I have 2 minutes for you guys on this. Go ahead. What did you make of that?
No, well, he was just like, I don't know if they got out of it. Meanwhile, he's in Brooklyn. I don't think they really got over it. But guys can become cool again, right? Like you can have no animosity. I've had teammates before that you don't talk to in the locker room, but on the court you have great connection with, right? And every team has that. But to say he got over it, I think there was just too many lingering things for him. It's true. You go and recruit him, and then all of a sudden you're in the car crying, and you were the first person that I called after we lost, and then all of a sudden we win 2 championships. We don't need you. You can go back. We were with. It's like, wait a second now. And that situation alone. We're not talking about the media scrutiny. We're not talking about everything else. that alone can send you out the door.
That's what happens when you have egos on the basketball team, especially a team that was in consideration for one of the greatest teams of all time, right? But if he got 2 MVPs, 2 final MVPs, if he got 2 world championships, they're on their way to a 3rd one. If he were healthy, they would have won that one. I think that's a value exchange. I think both sides got what they wanted. It may not have worked out perfectly throughout the entire exchange, but both sides ended up winning.
And I will say this, there's a couple of guys that, let's say if they would have only won one more championship, right, over this stretch without KD, let's say they would have won one. But the fact that they were able to win 3 championships, 2 with KD, a lot of guys now are going to be Hall of Famers. You're talking about now Andre Iguodala has a great chance to be a Hall of Famer. You have to talk about Draymond Green is now in Hall of Fame contention, right? These are guys that all of a sudden their resumes get filled out once he comes, regardless of what happens after the KD era. These guys have now solidified what their career is all about and has put them into another stratosphere.
You know what the problem is? The problem is, though, that it's the static outside of it. It's listen to all the fans and what the fans say.
You can't listen to everybody.
You can't listen to that, as I also respond back to people on Twitter. You know what I mean? But that's the world that we live in. You constantly are engaged in that debate with people, and that's
ignore him at all costs.
There you go.
We have a lot more on NBA free agency as we go, but it was a huge day in international sports. We showed you Wimbledon.